Well, this should be interesting. We are going to dip into the latest controversy with Jordan Peterson. Now, Jordan Peterson, I'd like to say that when he was an academic and some of his old lectures, there were some interesting topics that he would address, and I will strongman him as best as I can in saying that, especially when he would talk about performance gaps and the best ways to psychologically address shortcomings in students to close those performance gaps are wonderful. Interestingly enough, the race realist Jordan Peterson fans hate when you point that out, but it is what it is. These days, Jordan does seem quite a bit unhinged and has lost the plot, and he feels more like a political pundit than he does a self-help guru, which he's positioned himself as, or as a psychologist. But now we've got some interesting news. This is from his own Twitter. This is a few days ago. Breaking, the Ontario College of Psychologists, CP Ontario, has demanded that I submit myself to mandatory social media communication retraining with their experts for, among other crimes, retweeting Pierre Poilievre and criticizing Justin Trudeau and his political allies. I don't know who this dude is. He's an MP for Carleton or something. I don't know. I have no idea who this guy is. He deleted a tweet. I don't remember exactly which one that is. What is this? Was he replying to somebody? I guess so. Huh. Weird. Anyway, I am to take a course. I'm not going to do his voice the whole time. I don't want to deal with it. I am to take a course of such training with reports documenting my progress or face an in-person tribunal and suspension of my right to operate as a licensed clinical psychologist. So they want him to take a training and basically oversight, or he has to face a board. He calls it a tribunal, but it's a psychology board, and suspension of a right to operate as a licensed clinical psychologist. Well, it's interesting, though, because to be able to be a licensed clinical psychologist, you have to be approved. That's how that works. And the same people who approve you can then later unapprove you. That works for doctors, that works for psychologists, that works for a lot of things. It's weird that he has to make it sound like he's being persecuted when this is literally what happens to anybody who basically stops operating in the proviso of what is mandated by, the overarching board. You got in trouble with your bosses. Now, you can have an argument whether or not you think that's right. That's fine. But if you're going to argue this, you have to argue it in good faith. You can't just say, well, they just don't like what's coming out of his mouth, what he has to say. You have to look at it from the perspective of the board. And if you don't like that, and I understand many people who are Jordan Peterson fans don't like that, well, then you're not really going to be able to be a psychologist. You can say that's wrong, but I don't know how you're going to propose to change that. All you can really do is be mad about it. About a dozen people from all over the world submitted complaints about my public statements on Twitter and Rogan over a 4-year period out of the 15 million who follow me on social media, claiming that I had harmed people, not them, with my views. I mean, do you need, every person who doesn't like you and has a problem with what you have to say all, collectively get together and put the effort in to make this giant potato? It's unreasonable. So that's not an argument. In its wisdom, CP Ontario decided to pursue these complaints even though they could have dismissed them as vexatious. I have been accused of harming people, although none of the complaints involved in the current action were clients of mine, past or present, or even acquainted with any of my clients. It's weird that as you have a larger social media presence, you do wield more socio-political power, and you still have to be responsible for that. That just is what it is. That's everybody. Again, you can complain that that's not fair. I disagree, but it is what it is. And even though many of them falsely claim that they were or had been clients of mine and were allowed by CP, I don't know if this is true or not. He's going to have to show evidence that these people lied that they were clients of his. I don't know where that's coming from. That sounds totally bullshit. We are now in a situation in Canada under Justin Trudeau where practicing professionals can have their livelihoods and public reputations threatened in very serious manner for agreeing with the official opposition and criticizing major government figures. That is the place that we have lived forever. It has always been like that. You are not special. It is not different. If I comply with the terms of my re-education, and my punishment will be announced publicly. I have already had the second most serious category of punishment levied against me and have been deemed at high risk to re-offend. We'll get to there is a very interesting part to this. We'll get to it in just a second. I want to get through his whole thread first. Canadians, your physicians, lawyers, psychologists, and other professionals are now so intimidated by their commissar overlords that they fear to tell you the truth. It means that your care and legal counsel has been rendered dangerously unreliable. So an oversight committee trying to, do an oversight is making it dangerously unreliable. Got it. Okay. I don't care. To reiterate, I face public disgrace, mandatory political re-education. I mean, you already are a public embarrassment. Let's be honest. Disciplinary hearing and potential loss of my clinical licensing for agreeing with Pierre Poilievre, criticizing blah, blah, blah. If I am willing, if CP Ontario concurs, which they won't, to make absolutely every word of all of this wholly public so that everyone can decide for themselves what is actually happening and to let the chips fall where they will in consequence. Now, this is important to talk about because Jordan Peterson does not work as a psychologist. If he sees any clients at all anymore, I will be shocked. The dude spends 19 hours a day shitposting on Twitter and whining and crying about a bunch of random ass shit. He really fucking hates trans people lately. Like super. They offend his gentle sensibilities. How he manages with a 19-hour regimen of shitposting on Twitter and then going on TV shows, making his own YouTube channel, touring around the country, and writing books, how he manages to actually work as a psychologist is very dubious and questionable at best. So this is posturing. He's not losing anything by doing this. He has overwhelmingly cast off his role as a medical professional to focus on his social media. That's what he's done. And that's his right. Like, he makes way more money doing this shit. And I would argue he can reach more people by doing what he does with social media than he ever could as a psychologist. So again, I don't think this is really that big of a fucking deal. I really don't. This is just more crybaby shit of like Mafreeze Peach, Anyway, here's a video from his daughter. So let's see what Andrew Tate's ex-girlfriend has to say.
The College of Psychologists, a bunch of people put in power by the government basically, is threatening to take my dad's psychology license because he's been criticizing the government. This isn't a joke. This has been torturing my family since 2018, seriously bullying my dad in a way that really caused everyone in my family a lot of stress.
Man, if only he didn't have millions and millions of dollars to mop up all them tears. It's weird. It's so weird. The thing is, what makes me hurt inside are millionaires with cult-like followings being persecuted. Man, I can't even begin to tell you how sad that makes me.
I think it's part of what contributed to him being quite ill in 2019, 2020. The colleges are in charge of doctors, massage therapists, dentists. They've been around since about the 60s, and it turns out, which I guess isn't that surprising, they've been infiltrated by the government, and now it looks like they're being used to control particularly conservative working professionals.
None of that is true. These types of oversight boards have existed forever. I mean, like, we're talking centuries, okay? Oversight has always been important, especially when it comes to medicine, and then even more so now when it comes to things like psychology, psychiatry, mental health clinicians, all of that sort of thing. Somebody says, from my understanding, they're taking his license because he refuses to complete requirements for keeping his license. Maybe. But like all of this is just it's none of this is real. All of this is bullshit. And like there are so many conservative doctors, psychologists, et cetera, et cetera. They're not being persecuted. Jordan is being persecuted. And I honestly don't even know if it is what he claims it is.
Think you can trust your doctor to talk to you about anything that the government doesn't back? Definitely not, although we probably already knew that. This is kind of how colleges work in part. So this is how bad it is.
See, this is weird too, because even Jordan says he is being, Jordan claims that he is being persecuted because he agrees with some random dude and he's critical of Justin Trudeau. And she is trying to put it as, if you say something that the government doesn't agree with, probably, something about wellness or health or vaccines or some shit, then that's where you're going to be persecuted. Like their arguments aren't even consistent, and that is another part of the problem,
He's getting investigated because of tweets he's tweeted, personal tweets, opinions, things he said on Joe Rogan. It's such a scam, too. They're requiring him to do media retraining that he pays $225 an hour for an unspecified amount of time.
How will he afford
that? And then
that?
At the end of that training, they decide whether or not he's learned anything and whether he can continue being a psychologist. This isn't even a process that goes to court. It's just this regulatory board of like 12 tyrannical individuals. It's crazy that what you say online can be used to get rid of your license if people don't like you politically, which doesn't sound very democratic to me. They don't like
but that's not that. Take it up with the fucking board of psychologists. That's all you have to do. Take it up with the board of psychologists, and that's it. That's it.
His opinions, so they're trying to shut him down, but right now it's in a very real way. The tweets they've identified as problematic include the tweet about Elliot Page. Dad's trying to protect kids from being sterilized.
At least I will give her at least this. At least she is saying Elliot. And her dad couldn't even do that.
That's definitely not appropriate. The tweet about the obese woman on Sports Illustrated, again, obesity should not be celebrated. It kills people. And then tweets criticizing Justin Trudeau and another member of the Liberal Party, threatening to take your job as a serious threat. Anybody can submit a complaint about a psychologist or a doctor for that matter. Anybody. Doesn't have to be a former client. So for Dad, it's random people on Twitter complaining about him. Out of his audience of 20 million, he has 12 complaints. The college could
but he still has complaints. Whether you can't just play numbers game with that kind of shit. It's so simple. If there is a complaint, they then have to file it. Enough complaints, they have to look into it. Then they have to gauge it on its merits, whether or not there is something actionable or not. You can dislike this process, and that is fine. You can hold that position. I'm not going to tell you not to. But at the same time, trying to play this stupid numbers game, this is baby brain argumentation right here. Baby brain. Look, it's trying to think. I'm sorry, that is not a good argument. And anybody who will buy that argument is not actually listening or thinking about it. They're just like, yes, Jordan Peterson is good, and thus by proxy his daughter is also good, and I'm just going to believe what they fucking say. It's a dumb argument. You should feel insulted that they're trying to sell it to you, okay?
throw these complaints out, but instead they're threatening him and have been for years, wasting his time, bullying him, and threatening to take his license. Maybe we'll do a podcast about it. I'm not entirely sure what to do here other than tell people about what's going on, but maybe complaining back at them is appropriate. You can go to the link. I'm going to link it below, and you can enter in a complaint about the college itself and the people.
That's going to help. That's going to help with your dad keeping his license. Just harass the shit out of the psychology board. That's going to help. I mean, it's not like he cares. The thing is, and this is what you really got to understand. Jordan Peterson does not care about losing his psychology degree. He does not care. Does not give a shit. He doesn't work as a psychologist anymore. All of this is going to basically be more ammunition for what he's trying to accomplish. And that's his activism, you know? And it's the same old thing. If this was 2015, 2016, and things existed in the vacuum, and there was no necessarily, like, you could put blinders on to know whether or not Jordan was popular or not. Any person who right now is probably a Jordan Peterson fan would call him a crybaby and would say he's trying to gain oppression Olympics points, okay? That is what you this is the kind of thing that you would hear. But things are different now because Jordan good, because team sports for politics, you know?
People running it because they're bullying and harassing my family. So I don't know where the protection there is. Where's the protection against a tyrannical organization that's set in place to protect the government? This is basically the communist union at this point, picking on a professor for his opinions on Twitter against the government. It's absurd.
See, the thing is, though, nobody is telling him he can't tweet, and nobody is preventing him from tweeting. The government is not censoring Jordan Peterson. What the government is doing, what the psychologist board is doing, is basically saying, if you keep posting like this, you do not get to have the title of a board-certified psychologist. Nobody can take away his psychology degree. And nobody can take away his Twitter, because that would be awful and shit terrible. And don't get me wrong, like, I think Jordan Peterson is harmful to society because he does damage to young men. I do. I legitimately do. I don't think his advice is good. I don't think he's a good role model. I think he makes terrible, poor choices, but acts like his choices don't matter and everybody else should, like, judge themselves on things that he doesn't even judge himself by. But I don't think that you should just, like, remove his ability to talk. And nobody's trying to do that. They're removing his ability to speak as an expert. And I think that's probably a really good idea. But the thing is, his audience isn't going to care. His audience is not going to care. Ultimately, this kind of thing, while probably necessary for maintaining the consistency and you know, the credibility of the board of psychologists is necessary to do, ultimately it helps him with his activism, and that's annoying. Yeah, I don't know. So next I wanted to take a look at, this is, let's see if we can get let me scoot this over so we can actually get it a little bit bigger. Wait. Read full article. Yeah, here. You know it's got to be great when he had to have it published by the National Post. Oh my God, fuck off. Okay, so this is the article that he wrote. The practice of psychology in Ontario and in many other North American and Western jurisdictions is subject to regulation by professional colleges, essentially governmental organizations with a mandate to protect the public from misconduct on the part of physicians, etc., 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 etc. Yes. Anyone, anywhere in the world can levy a complaint to these regulatory bodies for any reason, regardless of whether the complaint has any direct contact with the professional in question. Respective colleges have the responsibility to determine whether each complaint is serious and credible enough to warrant further investigation. Correct. When the college decides to move forward, it is a serious move, essentially equivalent to a lawsuit. Incorrect. It does recommend legal counsel, yes, but it is not the same as a lawsuit. No. They've levied a multitude of such lawsuits against me since my rise to public prominence 6 years ago. These have multiplied as of late. Oh, yeah, and though none at all the 20 years or so I practiced as a psychologist before that. That should tell you something, Jordan. That should be a big neon sign in the fucking sky that something happened when you became a social media phenomenon. Multiplied as of late. For my crimes, I've been sentenced to a course of mandatory social media communication training, blah, blah, blah. I am to do this at my own expense, some hundreds of dollars per hour, like he can't afford it. For a length of time that is to be determined only by those who are training me and profiting from doing so. How will this be determined when those very re-educators have convinced themselves that I've learned my lesson and will behave properly in the future? Yeah. Oh, and he's got to include the tweet where Elon sent 2 exclamation points. Jesus. If I agree to this and I have to admit that I've been unprofessional in my conduct, I think that's beyond question at this point. The simple fact that he, a licensed psychologist, decided to go under a chemically induced coma to bypass having to deal with an addiction, that right there, like if a psychologist recommended that to somebody struggling with the psychological addiction of drugs, not even just the physiological, the psychological, I mean, they would have to lose their license. It'd be fucked up. Rules for thee, but not for me. So, I mean, like, even the things that they're complaining about him are not the things that I would levy complaints about. I think mine would have more merit, but I'm not in charge, so. What exactly have I done that is so seriously unprofessional that I'm now in danger, not only to new potential clients, he's never taking new clients. Hard to tell with some of the complaints. One involved the submission of the entire transcript of a 3-hour discussion on the Joe Rogan podcast. Here are some examples that might produce some reasonable concern among Canadians who care about such niceties as freedom of belief, conscience, and speech. I retweeted a comment made by Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre about the unnecessary severity of the COVID lockdowns. Why is Jordan Peterson talking about... Why would a Conservative leader and then a psychologist be talking about whether or not it's viable for lockdowns to, address a pandemic when it's not any of their business? It's the same thing with why I get so pissed when he starts talking about, like, climate change and shit. He's not a climatologist. He knows nothing about this kind of shit. He's self-educated insofar as he read a bunch of books and got paid by a natural gas company to tell everybody that fracking is good. Like, come on. I'm sick of him talking about stuff that he doesn't understand. Criticize Justin Trudeau. Well, that's fine. Criticize whoever you want. Criticize a bunch of politicians. I made a joke about the Prime Minister of New Zealand, Jacinda Ardern. Okay. If these are the actual things that they have a problem with, then I think this is kind of ridiculous and they should have much better ones. But at this point, they must just be, like, kind of irritated with his ass and just want him to be done. Maybe some interesting note that I wrote to Prime Minister Justin Trudeau this week informing him of this situation. Here's a letter for public consideration. Okay, they're requiring I undergo this course. Some 15 million people follow me. I've rejected this forced re-education request. I will in consequence soon be a period. Wait. So here's the thing that I don't understand. Why if he hates Justin Trudeau, why would he then write a letter to Justin Trudeau? Furthermore, if he doesn't want the government involved with the board being able to dictate what to do, why would he then want the government to step in to deal with the board? This doesn't make any logical sense at all. Furthermore, does he not want any regulation? Like, this is weird. This is so weird. Anyway. This is all kind of boring. I want to move on to this. This is what I really want to check out. You want to make the details of the accusations against me public. Here's a string beginning the process. Thread. I don't know what happened to this one. I guess he deleted it. Here are the demands made of me with regard to my re-education. Firmly indicated my refusal to comply. So we're going to check out these last two. I want to see what these are. Crap. Okay, I got to move this over. Yells. I acknowledge that the Inquiries, Complaints, and Reports Committee of the College of Psychologists are concerned with the following aspects of my public statements obtained in the Registrar's report dated May 17th, 2022, that I may have lacked professionalism in public statements made on social media and during January 25th, 2022 podcast appearance. In light of the concerns expressed by the ICRC, I hereby undertake to do the following, which, I mean, look, lacked professionalism in public statements. I mean, that's obviously true. He's like gone on unhinged rants over and over and over and over again. Like, I'm not surprised. I undertake to work with either Dr. Erica Abner or Gail Siskin to review, reflect on, and ameliorate my professionalism in public statements. I will complete the coaching program within 6 months of receiving the ICRC decision in this manner. On the basis of the progress of my coaching program, the coach may, at their discretion, request that the registrar shorten or extend the coaching program. Within 10 days of signing the undertaking, I will contact either them, blah, blah, blah. Notify the college of my selection of coach. I get to choose between either one. They're both women, so I'm sure that pisses him off. Deal with it. The coaching program will begin when the ICRC releases its decision. College will provide the coach with a copy of the decision of the inquiries. May provide the coach with any relevant previous conduct history. May contact the registrar. Contact the coach. Blah, blah, blah. Okay. And then... Oh, shit. Boom. I understand that if the coach does not provide a final report indicating that the acknowledged concerns above have been appropriately remediated in the public interest, I will not be considered to have successfully complied with this undertaking. This may constitute professional misconduct, and the registrar may proceed to investigate the matter in accordance with blah, blah, blah. In the event that, for any reason beyond my control, I'm unable to satisfy all the terms, any modification of the acknowledgement undertaken will be the discretion of the registrar. I have the opportunity to seek qualified legal advice before agreeing to this acknowledgement and undertaking. Okay. None of this means anything. It doesn't. None of this means a goddamn thing. This is all 100% just going to feed into and boost the rampant, fervent fanboyism of people who adhere to and follow Jordan Peterson blindly without questioning a goddamn thing that he says. Like I said at the beginning of this video, I think that there are things that Jordan can talk about, and he can talk about them well. I think that there is definitely room for him to be a force for good. I don't even think that necessarily his rules for life are necessarily bad. They're not. Some of them are not necessarily good either. They're just eye-rollingly. But like, the problem is not with the message necessarily in his overarching theory of psychology. It's everything else that he does. And he's lost his damn mind, and he says some really crazy shit. He does push pseudoscience, harmful medical pseudoscience. He does push anti-climate action pseudoscience, things that are demonstrably not true. He lies, and that sucks. Now, I don't agree with Canada trying to shut him up, and they're not trying to shut him up. They're just trying to make it so he can't do that while being able to say he's a licensed psychologist. And I gotta say, I agree with him. So, it sucks to suck. But, like, nobody should be feeling bad for Jordan. He's going to make money off this. This is going to propel him into the public eye for months. And he's going to milk it. And he's going to make a fuck ton of money. And all of the people who are, like, underneath that, including this one, and all these other, like, grifty, stupid YouTubers, are just going to make a ton of money off of it. So, yeah, don't feel bad for him. This is just, this is good news for them in the long run.